Hi, my name is Stadi Reaves, and I was inspired by a young lady named Sarah Anderson a little while ago who gave a video testimony of how the Lord delivered her from cancer. And after that, the Lord put on my heart that there's so much really nonsense being put on Facebook and YouTube to take advantage of the technology and opportunity to share my testimony. And along with that, I also put this out as a testimony challenge, not to make light of giving our testimonies because we are overcome by His blood and the word of our testimonies. But I'll be brief. I was born in Camden, New Jersey, 1970. Um, it was around the 80s where I started to experience life. And I always found myself to be a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Never thought I fit into any particular group, but even in my young childhood, I would find myself sneaking downstairs after mom's and them parties and grabbing a drink or what have you. I seem to take to it more so than any of the other siblings or cousins. But what I found is that later on, yeah, at the age of 11, that alcohol allowed me to fit in where I thought I never could. Um, Not only did I like the taste of alcohol, I fell in love with the effects of alcohol because it allowed me to be an alter ego, someone other than myself. Growing up in Camden wasn't easy. Not being athletic, not being popular, you know, um, had the nappiest head of hair that any kid could probably have, and people took every opportunity to remind me of that. I was the butt of a lot of jokes, verbally taunted, just it was for me a very uncomfortable and miserable experience. I can understand and sympathize with those kids who experience bullying, but it really hurts when, adults and even some family members, take opportunity to poke fun at you. But, I never felt like I fit in, so at the age of 11, I really fell in love with the effects of alcohol. I found myself on many occasions trying to fit in while under the influence of alcohol. I remember one incident in particular, in the sixth grade, it must have been. I found the old bottle of wine in our basement, drank it, went to school, you know, drunk as a skunk. From what they tell me, I acted a fool. Came home that day and threw up all over my mother's bedroom. And when she finally came home, there was such a look of disappointment in her face that to this day it's burnt into my memory. But that wasn't even enough to stop me. I could blame it on my father, who had an issue with alcohol, but praise be unto God, he's been delivered. But I realized that that would just be an excuse. So I went through my adolescence and teens, drinking and feeling alone. Never thought I'd fit in, far from popular. And the drink and the drug allowed me to fit into certain circles. Alcohol was my demon. Marijuana, I smoked, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what hooked me. I messed around with cocaine a little bit, but that's not what hooked me. Even as I fast forwarded to college, messed around with, the LSD and all that crazy stuff, but that never hooked me. It was the alcohol. It allowed me to mask a lot of pain on the inside, because I was a very lonely person. And even in crowded rooms alone, it's sad that one can be that. But I'm just going to fast forward and tell you that behind the drinking and the feelings of selflessness, worthlessness, self loathing, I had low self esteem, and it was very early on in life, probably in my late teens, where I began to have suicidal thoughts. And that stayed with me for quite some time. So much so that as I fast forward to my college years, did a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, a lot of masking pain, and I just felt so alone all the time. because after the party was over, I had to go home and be by myself and just be in my own personal misery. So I found myself one afternoon after everyone had left for the holidays at Stockton College, is where I went to college, and I was in my apartment all by myself, and went out and picked up a case of beer. And at this point, I had really dealt with so much loneliness and misery, and that I decided that I didn't want to live anymore. So drank a few beers, more than a few, swallowed a handful of prescription pills that I had at the time, and thought I was going down for my final time. But I didn't know it then, but God had other plans for me, because I wound up waking up still feeling lonely, still feeling empty, still feeling like I didn't fit in, you know. But somehow, some way, by the grace of God, I made it through the college years and graduated, and started working in the casinos and was living on my own. And that's when things really got worse, because I really had no one to even try checking me. And for several years, it was crazy. I would go to work, come home, pick up a couple 40 ounces, drink by myself, you know, cry myself to sleep some nights. Still dealt with the depression, still dealt with, did I mention, with social anxiety. So I basically had a fear of crowds and people, so I stayed to myself. I was a recluse. There were episodes where I would go to the supermarket, and I'd have food in my basket, and the panic attacks would hit, and I'd have to abandon the basket and make my way home, drink myself to sleep, and figure out how to deal with the misery called my life. And this went on for a while, and I even remember times being at my apartment in the Highgate in Atlantic City, you know, in the midst of shaving, and I used a straight razor. And there were many a days I stood in front of that mirror and thought of how easy it would be to just slit my wrist, because I was just so lonely, just so tired of living, so tired of trying to fight, so tired of trying to find a reason to go on, But again, I didn't know it then, but God had greater plans for me. I was in such misery, and it was around this time, I was going to work in the morning, maintaining a job, but I'd be a mess, smelling like booze, just tired and beat down, and having the next morning sweats and all that. And I remember there was a bathroom on, I think, the fourth floor at the Trump Marina that was nice and cool, and I'd be so miserable, the room spinning coming in after a heavy night of drinking. I would used to go upstairs and lay down on that bathroom floor and put my face on the floor because it was cool and it would settle me. That's how sick the disease had me. But after a while, there was a friend of mine, Felicia. She was also my manager, who continued to just put tracts on my desk and pray for me and talk about Jesus, and for the longest, I'd be like, yeah, I hear what you're talking about. But I continued for years, just drinking. But she was always there putting the word of Jesus in my ear and talking about, how much better I am than I treated myself. So anyway, I find myself, still drinking and still having a suicidal thought, still looking in the mirror, not liking what I saw. And I even got a DWI in the midst of all of this. And that was one of my first awakenings. But I'll fast forward to the point to where my friend Felicia continued to invite me to church, and eventually I accepted her invitation, and it was on my third trip there where the preacher had given an invitation, and I don't even remember walking up. I just remember standing before the altar and crying out to Jesus, whom I had rejected all of my life. And at this point, I was under the care of a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and they had me on antidepressive drugs. And I had been under that way for maybe 3 or 4 months, but I had declared that day I had stepped before that altar that I didn't want to see another doctor or take another pill, and I didn't. I walked out of that church, and that was my declaration. And to this day, I haven't even considered suicide or the depressive thoughts, if you will. And from that moment on, my life began to change miraculously. It wasn't the doctors, it wasn't the pills, it wasn't the booze that I used to drink, it wasn't the broken relationships. It was Jesus that eventually I accepted into my heart to where my life changed drastically. And I'm just here to tell anybody that's listening, I don't know what you're going through, but this little nappy headed boy from Camden, New Jersey, who didn't want to wake up the next day, who hated himself because he believed the lie that people told him that he was ugly, that he was worthless, that he had no talent, that he wouldn't go anywhere. And this is the misery that I live with, and it was a lie straight from the pits of hell. But I want somebody to know that I've been saved for 12 years, and I've been sober for just as many years. And there are some relatives that I know, you're struggling for a day, trying to find a reason to go on. There are some friends that I've grown up with and I've gone to school with, I've worked with, and you wonder why I always had this joy and calm about me. I'm here to tell you that it's nobody else but Jesus, and you can have the same joy too. So I challenge somebody else to give their testimony. This is not about boasting about our past or any of our accomplishments or all the things that we used to do, but it's about giving somebody hope, letting them know that there is hope for their miserable situation, and that hope is only found in Jesus Christ. There is no other name given unto men that they may be saved except the name of Jesus. No other religion, no other guru, no self help, motivational speaker, nobody but Jesus. And it's more than just knowing his name, you have to accept him into your heart. I love life today. I have a wife that I would have never dreamed I would have had, lovely kids. You know, the Lord has blessed me to be able to travel to Africa and Trinidad on several occasions, and I never would have thought that possible except for Jesus. So, I challenge you, give your testimony. Give somebody else hope that they may know the joy that I have come to know. I love y'all. God bless y'all.